Guys, we're here with Zellie Imani, educator, organizer, founder of the Patterson chapter of Black Lives Matter. Welcome to our podcast, though.
Thanks for having me,
Yes.
bro.
Welcome, brother.
How long have you been involved with the movement, though?
Fam, I've been involved in the movement since it pretty much started back in
Yeah.
2014 with the death of Mike Brown.
Right.
So when Mike Brown was killed August 9th, 2014 by the white police officer named Darren Wilson, we seen a big uprising occur in Ferguson that we'd never seen before. And I remember sitting at home in Jersey, probably like the rest of y'all, like looking at everything on our cell phones and seeing, people getting tear gassed and being maced and shot at by rubber bullets.
Right.
And I know a lot of people was like, yo, that's crazy. And then for me, though, like being a student of history and so involved in the community and wanting freedom so bad, I was like, yo, this is our civil rights movement. This is our generation's like Black Power movement. I have to be there. Like I have to be there. So I actually flew down there to Ferguson to stand in solidarity with the folks down there and help organize as much as I could before I came back to Jersey to, get it popping over here.
Yeah, absolutely.
How receptive were people over here once you started to organize over here in North Jersey?
The people were really receptive, because I wasn't part of the Black Lives Matter organization at that time. I was just part of what was called the Black Lives Matter movement, which is made up of different organizations.
Okay.
But when we started to have like rallies and protests here, I knew that in order to have change in a city or anywhere else, you just can't have one rally, right? You just can't have one demonstration.
Right.
That's what the system wants. They want you just to have that one little rally. You guys gonna get fired up, get all your anger out. By the end of the day, y'all gonna go home and nothing's really gonna change.
Right.
And I knew that in order for something to change, that we had to have not a moment, but a movement. In order to create and sustain a movement, we need to be organized. Because the system is organized, but we're not. In order to feed an organized system that's oppressing us and dehumanizing us, we need to have an organized group of people that will fight back to dismantle all these systems that are dehumanizing us. So the people can ask me, yo, we need a chapter, we need a chapter, we need a chapter. So I was like, all right, I caved in and I helped form the Black Lives Matter chapter here in Patterson.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question related to, you said that you flew down to Ferguson.
Yeah.
In regards to the protest, and I've, a little older than you guys, but been involved in protests. When I'm at the protest and I get home, there's always a different portrayal of the actual protest than what's going on, the reality versus the media portrayal. Can you speak a little bit about that in regards to Black Lives Matter?
Speak on that. And I think what's so powerful about that particular moment in history was this was at the time when, Black Twitter and, Black Tumblr and everything else was really starting, like Black Mind was really starting to get popping, right? Where we was actually starting to use these social media platforms to, share our messages and to show the world our creativity, but it was also showing the world like what was really going on. So a lot of times, like you were saying, like literally we would go home, or not even home, back to the hotel, like I always say, smelling like sweat, tear gas, and freedom, and turn on the TV, and then you have the police chief going up there and saying like, no, everyone, don't worry, we didn't tear gas, the protesters today. And we were like, wait, like, yes, y'all did. And then we could actually, post on social media the videos and the pictures of us being tear gassed that day.
Right.
Then other media who is watching us will retweet us and write stories about it. And then a couple hours later, there'll be another press conference with the chief saying, protesters were tear gassed, today, unfortunately.
Right. So that's the beauty.
It's the beauty of social media, of this power like we never really had before. Before we always had to rely on the mainstream news, but now we had like social media in a palm, literally in the palm of our hands.
Social media definitely it's powerful for outreach and awareness and organization. How do you feel about, I guess the downside is being some people assume that sharing something or just liking something is enough.
Yeah.
Like that is enough for them to be considered an activist. You know, how, you know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I personally don't feel it's enough to consider yourself an activist, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Because what we always know is that silence is violence, and that if you are not standing up for people or voicing your opinion, at least, you're pretty much being complicit to this constant dehumanization, oppression of Black people. So even sometimes just liking it or sharing it, retweeting it, even though it's not the largest step that you can take, it's still a step in the right direction, right? Because if you are able to reshare my flyer, even if you don't go out, you resharing my flyer means someone else may see it who may actually come out to my event, you know?
Absolutely.
So I still see value in people who are sharing it, who may not have the courage at that point in time to come out, because a lot of people we know, man, especially white folk, they're scared about their reputations. They're scared about losing friends. Even if they may think like, you know, Black Lives Matter, they may just be whispering it to their friends like, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And now you put some bass in your chest when you say Black Lives Matter if you really mean it, you know? So I think this moment that we're at right now, where we see so many people are coming out, that it's a change where people are really like, you know what, F it. I'm going to come out in the streets anyway. I'm going to voice my opinion. I think that's the beautiful thing.
How do you feel as an educator, as somebody, you know, who's a teacher, you know, even initially, did you ever have like those thoughts, like, you know, my professional reputation,
of course,
or any of those things, you know?
Of course, you know, that happens all the time where white colleagues or white coworkers or white teachers, they'll see something that I posted and then share it amongst themselves and like, you know, backbite me or, you know, try to say that I'm racist or reverse racist for this type of things. And even try to get me in trouble for the things that I post. And even, you know, I'm very careful about what I say on the internet, because I know there's a lot of eyes who are just like itching and waiting to get me in trouble with either my principal or, you know, superintendent. But at the end of the day, I can't let these people silence me, because they've been silencing us for, you know, over 400 years. And we're so close to being something great that I can't allow anyone, you know, to silence me, right? That at the end of the day, I could go home and sleep peacefully at night, knowing that, you know, I've been standing up for people.
Right. Yeah, that's for certain. I have a question also, because as a student of history as well as you are, I think about this moment is different. And part of my joy is that it is a different moment, and it's a multicultural movement, or even more so than the 60s. But my fear is, I think about after, you know, Reconstruction, the end of Reconstruction, when white Northerners said, leave the South to themselves. And then you begin to get segregation, heavier dose of white supremacy. After the 60s, you had white folks who were down with the hippie movement protesting. But when the movement shifted towards, let's say, Black power, many of those liberals were easily swayed and stepped away. My fear is that we have this moment in history where we can really make some fundamental changes. And my fear is that those same folks who are allies aren't allies. They're upset about the incident, but not recognizing Black humanity as a whole.
Right.
So I just want to get your thoughts on that. The idea of allies kind of stepping away from the movement once it really gets hot.
Yeah, definitely. I think, unfortunately, that's the problem in the older generation, right? And when I go out to these protests, like this younger generations, this Generation Z, they're like amazing. Like they're like 16-year-old, 15-year-old talking about white supremacy capitalism. I'm like, whoa, like I've never even heard about that when I was like 13 or 12 years old, right?
Yeah.
And I think the beautiful thing about the youth, like the real youth, they're able now to see the interconnection of everything.
Right.
So even when folks are talking about climate change, they're not just talking about this climate change. These youth are saying climate change is affecting Black people more than anybody else, right?
Okay.
And when we talk about, these kids talk about gun violence, they're saying, wait, you know, gun violence actually is affecting Black people like more than anybody else. It's just not about school shootings, everybody, even though that's horrible. But gun violence has been occurring in Black communities for decades. And at the same time, what I saw was beautiful, they even acknowledging that, you know, this can't talk about school shootings when we talk about gun violence, that police shootings is also gun violence. So
Right.
it's able to connect now, like everything all together. So
Right.
we are actually the ones who is trying to catch up to the youth. So even though we may think that we leading the, you know, torch and carrying the torch, like we're actually not. We have to like look behind and say, oh, like the youth are actually going to be the ones who's actually going to get us free.
What do you attribute to that to? Like, what do you think is the difference there? Do you see any? Like, well, how did Generation Z, you know, grab it by the horns?
It's the internet, man. It's the internet.
Yeah.
I really think it's the internet.
Okay.
Because obviously they're not watching TV like that, you know, like
right.
Maybe the older generations, they're watching CNN all the time and, you know, MSNBC all the time. These kids are not getting the information from that. And the funny thing is, right, when you look about TikTok, right, and TikTok are usually like what, these like 30-second or a minute clips. Right. Sometimes in these 30-minute, 10-second clips, like kids are talking about like white supremacy and explaining things like this right here is white supremacy, and they're doing a dance to it, you know, and it goes viral. And all these other kids are like watching these viral clips talking about white supremacy. So they don't even have to watch like a document, you know, Terry on like white supremacy. They're getting these like quick little, you know, educational pieces from their peers, you know, in the palm of their hands. And this is like all they're watching every single day. YouTube all day long, TikTok all day long. And also I want to say too, that this generation is also experiencing a lot of racism because of the internet. A lot of these kids are playing, you know, Xbox or whatever.
Right. Oh, man.
And they, you know, called nigger, and they getting called nigger all the time. And they may say like, damn, for us living in an urban area, we may never have been called nigger as a kid because we was always around like black people. But now because they're interconnected with like the whole world, there's more opportunities for them to see racism and experience racism. And now they have all these questions. And you're trying to get these questions answered.
You know, because you've been involved since 2014. Is the energy different this time around? Do you feel it?
Yeah,
different.
The energy is completely different this time around. I think what is a great example of this, right, is that for this past 6 years, people have been trying to tell us to wait and that let justice, you know, the wheels of justice turn, right?
Yeah.
And that justice will come. We just need to be patient. But we can't be patient when Eric Garner, who died in 2014, died saying the same words that George Floyd said, I can't breathe, right? And we know we had that cell phone footage of Eric Garner being choked to death. And it took like what, almost 5 or 6 years for those police officers to actually get fired or anything to happen to them. And people are saying, you know what, we don't want to wait like another 5 years or 6 years for something to happen to police officers. And if this is the system that is going to continue to turn, then this whole system needs to be interrogated and torn down, and something else needs to be erected to actually provide safety for the black community.
Right, which is what I love. I see folks now beginning to, you don't hear the ideas about, oh, well, training, people is like scrap training. It's not about that. At the root, it's at the roots. Fundamentally, America is a white supremacist nation. And all the institutions are designed to keep that in place. And so what people are beginning to say is that, look, we pay taxes, and we're saying that we need a fundamental shift or a changing. Tear it down, and let's rebuild it differently, not the history of, you know, the patty rollers, you know, in the South, and those protecting property in the North. But one question, I think, Rob, we talked about this. Where do you see the role of allies in this movement, whether they be white allies or allies of color in this particular movement?
Right. There's different ways that allies can be involved on it. So, for example, on the front line, I've seen some beautiful examples where during marches or rallies, white allies will be leading in the front, right? So almost acting as a buffer between them and the police officers. So if the police are trying to rush these black organizers, it's like, nah, the white people get in front, like, nah, you're not going to arrest them. Like, y'all going to have to arrest us first before you get to the black organizers, you know?
Right.
This whole idea of trying to protect the black organizers first and putting their bodies on the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can put your body on the line one day. You can risk your life and your freedom one day. Black people are risking their lives and their freedoms every single day just living in this country. The other part about it is, as a white ally, is to support the demands of, of Black people, specifically when it comes to, defunding the police or abolishing the police or talking about abolishing prisons. Instead of, dismissing what we say, like, take our lead, follow our lead, and amplify the things that we're saying, and talk to the people in your community to make them understand what we're saying and why we're saying these things. And I think those are two important things that white allies can do, both on a physical front and those like in the home.
Right.
So growing up here, like I've always felt like, I remember as a kid always being drawn to Black stories, Black history, because I related to the otherism, right? Like the feeling of being an other in society as a Latino male, right? So I've always felt like on my end, like there was a solidarity with my community and the Black community. Is that felt on the other end? Is that accurate to say, or is there work needs to be done to have more solidarity between the Latino community and the Black community?
I think there's more work to be done. Like, honestly, I think there's more work to be done. And I think that divide maybe happened in the 80s and the 90s, particularly with, the crack epidemic and how it's really disrupted a lot of the communities. And because things were disrupted and we was faced with a lot of poverty, we became more individualistic, and we became more like self-centered, and we became more isolated or siloed. Where before, maybe in the the late 60s and 70s, we had the Black Panther Party, who was creating like these broad-based coalitions with different ethnic groups. You talk about Fred Hampton in Chicago, when he had the original Rainbow Coalition. We had the white gangs coming together. He had the Black gangs coming together. He had Hispanic gangs coming together. Everyone came together because they all recognized that they was all being oppressed by capitalism. And the way that we're going to fight capitalism is not by being, petty or, individualistic. It's by really, really coming together. And I'm hopeful right now because in these last wave of protests, you see it's completely diverse, right? Like, it's not just all Black people out there. Some of these rallies is like literally like 90% of white people that are out here.
Right, it's surprisingly diverse, right? Like
surprisingly diverse. You have people who are even like Muslim who are organizing some of these protests. You have people who are Latino who are organizing or completely involved in it. And I think those are the things that's going to get us closer to getting justice, because it can't just be Black people, because we're like 14% of the population. It can't be us. It has to be like a real collective effort for people who believe in justice.
That's right. Absolutely. Because you have to see, as you said, the commonality is that outside of the 1%ers, the system oppresses everyone.
Right.
And teaches you that your way to success is to oppress another human being. And I talk about this often about, look, all groups that are classified as white weren't classified as white.
Right.
One of their tickets into whiteness was the idea that we'll align with you to kind of like oppress the other groups that are here. And so that's the discussion that has to always be at the forefront for folks to understand that there's never been a time, and I say this, that Black freedom hasn't led to freedom for other groups of people. There's never been a time. So, hitch your wagon to this thing here, and it opens the door for all of us. And that's how we have to kind of look at it.
Yeah, and I'll even add to that, where for whatever reason, like the movements led by African Americans has just not inspired movements here in America, but all around the world.
Right.
So when we talk about these protests going on, these protests aren't just going on in America. They're going on in countries all over the world right now. I think like over 13 or even more countries, like France, Italy, the UK, South Africa. It's like everyone's having these big protests demanding rights, not just for Black people in America, but Black people all around the world, because anti-Blackness is not an American thing, it's a global thing.
That's right, yeah.
And this is a question for both of you guys, because I've been chewing on this for the last couple of months. You know, I'm a deeply spiritual dude, and when this COVID wave started just taking over the world and shutting down the world, right? Like, we have been robbed of everything that would distract us before, right?
Right.
Work. We've been staying home from work. We have no
Yeah.
sports. We have no concerts. We have no public gatherings at all. No restaurants. No Starbucks to go to. And it kind of forced us to deal with things that ordinarily we wouldn't deal with, or kind of put aside, whether it's mundane things like, you know, painting the porch, you know, or fixing relationships with your wife, or these deep social issues. Like, how much of an effect do you think the COVID quarantines have had on this moment?
Wow, that's a great question. I'll tackle it on one way, that before COVID-19, right, we normally would have to have a protest either on a weekend, or if we did have it during the day, it had to be like after 5 or 6 to ensure that people got out for work. Now you see these rallies like on Tuesday at 11 a.m. You know, and it's like Tuesday at 11 a.m. But there'll be like 1,000 people there,
right?
You know, or like a Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there'd be like 1,000 people out there at the rally, because, like you said, people don't got no work, people don't got no job right now, or they're, you know, unemployed or on furlough. There's no school for kids, high school's out, so people got time right now, lots of time on their hands, and nothing else to do, nothing else for entertainment. So it's like there's no concert, so shoot, might as well go out to this Black Lives Matter, you know, rally gonna be popping in my city today, you know.
Right.
It created this opportunity in this space that we never had before. And I don't want to downplay it like that, but we're in the midst of 2 pandemics, COVID-19 and racism. And it's just 2 viruses that are like really beating us down. And I really think it's so courageous that this pandemic that is literally killing people or putting people into hospitals, and people are risking their lives to come outside. Even if they may catch this virus, they don't care, because they are willing to risk their lives to ensure that another Black person doesn't get killed in this country by police violence. And that's a powerful thing.
It's heavy. I agree. And I see that people see that this is the time. I mean, you know, this is a time unlike any other time in history. And so the pandemic is kind of like a curse, but at the same time a gift. Because it allows folks to be out there and protest. I mean, day in and day out. And it reminds me of, like, I think of the Montgomery bus boycott, where the whites in power would say, Black folks don't have the stomach to continue this. They don't have the stomach. So they bet their money on the fact that Black folks were not going to be able to keep this thing going. But what they're getting now is not only Black folks out in those streets, but everybody is out in the streets. And the one thing I say is that, because I had a discussion with some white teachers from another district, and I said, for the first time, it seems as though you recognize the humanity in a Black man. And these young folks are not accepting the same old excuses that are thrown out. What was he doing? They're like, we don't give a shit about what he was doing. We see somebody's knee on another person's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, not letting up. Even when he wasn't moving, your knee is still on his neck. And so that really bothered folks. You know, the idea was that his humanity, they saw the humanity in a Black man. Now, my thing is that we need to get them folks to transition and say, no, it's always been a case of Black or folks of color humanity, as opposed to you just jumping up for an event that you found disgusting. We need you to see that the whole system is disgusting, not just for us, but for you as well. And the system needs to be pulled up from its roots. I like to say I'm a gardener. And when I get out in my garden, anytime I would chop a weed at its head and then get to the roots, that weed would come back even stronger. So now people are looking for the weeds to be pulled up. You know, and I think this is a moment that we can take advantage of right here right now. And I don't want to see any easy negotiations with the enemy or the other side.
Right.
No, bro. We need transformation. We need systemic change on this one, not just a few crumbs. We don't want that.
Right.
And I think this is the time. This is the time for it to happen.
I completely agree. You know, what we're going to start, I don't want to say we're going to see, we're already seeing a lot of people jumping up and recommending a lot of these different reforms. And a lot of these different reforms are coming from people who, I guess, want to be the face of this or jump in front of it or just want it for clout or just want to be seen as the leaders. But they haven't really studied anything about police violence or really understand that these cosmetic changes or these reforms that they're proposing really don't solve anything, all right?
Right.
Take, for example, with body cameras. The Minneapolis police, they have body cameras. That didn't prevent George's death. The Minneapolis police, they was trained in de-escalation training. They was trained in like racial bias training. No, and those things prevented George's death. So we have to really think like all these things that we keep saying, you know, or we want to believe in is going to change things. Really don't. Community policing doesn't change anything. Body cameras doesn't change anything. De-escalation isn't going to change anything. So we need to stop, like you said, you know, chopping off the head and just really get to the root. And the root of the matter is these are these systems that are working to oppress people, dehumanize Black people, and systems that are going to protect the police when they do wrongdoing. And these are things that need to be not, you know, painted over, but need to be dismantled with so that we can actually get real justice.
Part of the struggle is that so many white Americans have such a vastly different relationship with police than we do. So the perspective is very, very different. What are things that we need them to wrap their heads around in order for things to really change?
You're completely right. I think that the relationship with the police from white people is completely different to the relationship to Black people. And even though like thousands of white people are killed by police officers every day, white people have a different view of police officers than Black people, right? That Black people kind of realize or recognize them as occupying force, whereas white people internalize this idea that, you know, officers are here to serve and protect, and almost like they're neighborhood supermen, right? That they're here, you know, truth, justice in an American way, and that nothing that they can say is wrong, and if they did something wrong, it must have been for a good enough reason, you know. So it's always held in a good light, and I'm not sure what's going to really change their minds about that. You know, maybe it will take something like a George Floyd, but we shouldn't have to wait for this perfect case in order for people to see the humanity of Black people.
That's right.
Right. My argument tends to be like, you know, the abolishment of when you start saying the abolishment of police, you know, most people hear that and they're like, what do you mean? Who's going to come save the day? And who's going to be, you know, you're getting rid of my Superman, like you said, right? Yeah. So like where's the middle ground that we should be aiming for?
No,
is there middle ground?
When we talk about defunding police, right? A lot of urban cities, I would say a quarter or even more of their city's budget is dedicated to police officers, right? And when we think about that, and we think about the safest communities in New Jersey or whatever, the safest communities don't have more police officers. They don't, you know, they probably have less police officers.
They have less, right?
They have better jobs. They have better housing. They have better educational system. People have better access to healthcare, better access to quality foods, right? Healthy foods. All those places probably have like a Trader Joe's or like a you know, Whole Foods. There ain't no Whole Foods in, you know, my city. There ain't no Trader Joe's in my city. There's not even a lot of grocery stores in my city. So when we talk about creating safe and strong communities, if it's less police in your community and it's safe and strong, why would you say that in order for my community to be safe and strong, that we need police officers? You know, and to be able to challenge those ideas and to recognize that there's still a lot of violence and crime that occurs no matter how much police officers you hire. You can hire 600,000 police officers. People are still going to be raped. Women still going to be domestic violence in their homes, right?
In every
children are
community.
going to be molested, no matter how many officers you hire. How many officers you put on the corner. These things are still going to occur. So when we really want to talk about crime, we have to look at crime in a holistic way as well.
Right. I would like to just hit you with a last question. I know you busy brother and you stay in those streets.
Yeah.
What would you like to see as the outcome of the current protests that are taking place today? I mean, in your dream of dreams, what would you like to see as a result of the outcomes of the current protests that are taking place?
Yeah, I would love to see us reimagining what justice looks like, reimagining what strong, healthy communities look like. And I can even give that last example of us marching in the street and them having like dozens upon dozens of police officers because they thought, it was going to be mayhem. And they was all getting paid overtime. So the city just wasted like tens of thousands of dollars paying these police officers on overtime when we ourselves policed ourselves, right?
Right.
We directed the traffic. We kept everybody in check, make sure nothing happened. So in actuality, like we didn't even need the police officers there at that moment. Those police officers actually created like agitation and almost some type of confrontation just from their mere presence. So thinking about like, what does it mean for us as a community to start policing one another and having relationships with one another to prevent violence, right? Or to stop violence from reoccurring? What does it mean that if someone gets shot by the police officers, we are using the money divested from the police department to pay people from the community to go visit that brother in the hospital and diffuse the situation so there isn't a retaliation, right?
Right.
How do we like build these relationships, use this money in order to invest in the community in proven ways that can reduce violence? And I really want us to start having those discussions about like, hey, what can actually reduce violence? How can we put this money back into our schools, put this money into our educational system or community-led initiatives that can really make our community safe and really make our community stronger that we want to live in?
Absolutely. Well, listen, brother, we appreciate you joining us on the Abstract Truth, man. And listen,
yeah, bro,
stay in those streets, man.
I will, man. They'll be out when I get locked up.
That's right. We got you. All right, my brother. Listen, take it easy.
All right, take it easy.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
All right, bro. Take care.